This is going to be a continuation of the PowerShell like 100 series that we've been going through. We'll review a little bit. Hopefully this is quite a lot more of me typing, so there's possibly going to be a lot of mistakes. I like to do this one. This one will be a little more hands-on. So we'll go through it and kind of go back from where we were. Again, you're at the St. Louis PowerShell users group. Hopefully you're in the right place. Michael Lombardi and I are the organizers, and Worldwide Technology and Model. We've been doing it here a lot more. It just seems to be a decent location for everybody, and Worldwide's, footing the bill for the food every time, so it makes life easy. The agenda. So how did we get here? Why modules? How we're going to use them, and what's in them, and then how to build them. The next one that we will look at will be PowerShell 104, which we want to look at how do we automatically build these. And automatically, maybe isn't the right word, but how do we look at compiled modules versus I build a module, it's there, hey, great. But that isn't always the best way for source control, or if you have a lot of teams working in a module. So we'll expand upon this with another session around using some tools to do that, but then you got to get the basis first. So that's where we'll start. So review of past concepts. How did we get here? We got here by looking at first some command lines, just running some scripts, right? Or just running, not even scripts, just command lines, just commands themselves. And then scripts and functions. Scripts were just really, really basic. Wrote some stuff, threw it in a PS1 file. I execute it, has some hard-coded values in it. The next thing was then functions, right? Taking that approach, but reusing what I can. Those types of things. So that's kind of the progression that we're looking at is we executed stuff via the command line. We turned those into something that actually did something via script. Now we want to take that script and reuse parts of it. So we made it a function that has dynamic parameters. So it affects things, as I want, not just how things are today, are coded in my script. And then I want to make sure that's not somebody real quick. And then basically what modules are, I'll keep talking, is the culmination of putting like functions together to make some file, some collection of reusable pieces of code. So if you think about things like Active Directory or Exchange or some other things like that, where you might have functionality where you're like, hey, I need to not only create a user, I need to move them into an OU, I need to do this to their account, reset their password, all those types of things. You might create an Active Directory module for your team that has all those functions built into it. It's easier to distribute because it's now a file instead of all these different functions in script files. And it's versionable, loaded on demand, just like you would if you downloaded something from the gallery, which is a module. So we'll take a look at that. So real quick, I'll just flip over. I'm just going to use the ISE. Obviously, I don't use the ISE very much anymore these days, unless I'm doing something really quick. I'll use Visual Studio Code, but I want to keep this kind of agnostic because if you're on a server or you're not going to use code, but I heavily recommend code because of all of its workings. So if we started off with something very, very basic, I want to add two numbers together, right? So in the past, we can create a variable and we can call it A, and I can set it to 1, and I'm going to blow this up because you guys can't see any of that yet. That good? Kind of more. There we go. I'll clear all this out so you don't have to see it. And if I want to, I can do just a write host. And lo and behold, my little script runs. Kind of does. There we go. So this basically is a very quick example of, hey, I took some stuff, I wrote it as a parameter because I didn't want to hard code it, but I could turn this into a function pretty easily. So we'll go from a basic script where we hard code some values at the top, we run it, maybe we change those, we run it again. Let's make this a function now. So we move it to function, and we can just say get add numbers. And there's two ways to do this. We'll do it as very simple. If you guys remember functions, we have a simple function and then we have a advanced function. This is a simple, A and B. I'll write the advanced function here in a sec. C, A times away. B, turn C. Now I didn't have to do it. I could have done it otherwise. But now if we do something like this, have C is equal to get add numbers. A, see, notice A is now a parameter, so it knows that's just the ISE being nice to me. 2 and B is 4, and we should, I guess I didn't really need these, but hey, we'll do it hard-coded, so we still get 8. So my function is now here, and that's great. But now maybe I want to turn this into more of an advanced function because maybe I want to handle some things. Because right now, let's say most of you didn't even catch this. You're horrible. This is not add. That's add. What are you guys doing to me? So what happens if I now do, call this get math so I can change it. So super fun. What happens if I do this? Okay, that's, 0.5, great, that does work. But what happens if I do this? Big red text error, divide by 0, which I'm sure that's what that says if I actually moved it up. Yeah. So what happens if I want to handle this? Well, one, maybe I want to provide some more in-depth on how this is working. If I want to debug it, if I want to see some of those things. Maybe I don't necessarily want to return an error, I just want to return null. I want my function to work, I just don't want big red text on the screen. If you've run commandlets like getAdUser, sometimes it doesn't just outright red text fail, it just doesn't return an object. There's commands that do something like that, but they won't necessarily fail, they just won't return something because they couldn't find it, which is okay, but in a lot of cases, if you're writing or looking at functions from PowerShell Gallery or other people, those end up being written with very little debug output. Like if you're creating, you're like, oh man, I'm writing out all these lines to the host, I'm going to do all this stuff so I can see it. Not necessarily when you go to give it to somebody else. You just want to run that command and that's it. One, because you can pipe, right? You can send the output of this to the next command, and therefore you don't want all that extraneous output to be moved along to the next function. So one of the things we can do, take this and we can use param, and okay, I can type this faster than copy paste, geez. And then there's one thing that we always do for an advanced function, which is called command binding. What this does is it takes this function and this, how we're writing it, turns it into an advanced function, because basically what it's going to do is take this function and emulate what a full-on actual like C# written commandlet. That's, by the way, the difference between like modules and functions and commandlets. Commandlets are actually written in C# and are exported and used in PowerShell. Modules and functions are PowerShell written. So what this does is it lines up a bunch of things for us on our function. So if I do, if I do get math, notice I have a lot more stuff now than just A and B. All of this comes from commandlet binding. Some of the things that you can use is verbose, something I use quite often, and then also error action. So depending on commandlets that you get, maybe not necessarily your own, or maybe you want to write this in, and you can easily Google how to implement these things. But one of the things you can do is you can say, okay, I'm going to put my example back here. A is 2 and B is 0, let's say in this case. If I want to come in here and now I can add something like a try catch block. Oops. Come on. There we go. So again, just kind of going through some of the error handling. And initialize my C to 0, not that I really care. So if there's an error, it's going to come back as null. If I actually can do a division here, in this case, I'll return that value out. So in this particular case, what I might want to do is I might want to catch this error, but I don't always want to write it out. However, in this case, instead of write host or write output, there is a write verbose. So only when you make an advanced function, so let me scoot this down a little. Only when you write an advanced function like this and you use write verbose, so when you have commandlet binding and use write verbose, that's when you can add this verbose, and that will clue your function into actually writing out the write verboses like you would a write host or write output. So you can say error in function. Now I'm going to do another little trick here. So this -f, this is a quick format. It's kind of like Python has something similar to this, or other languages do, where you can do quick formats where the variables on the right after the F, they're just comma separated, and they would replace this. So I could say error in, not that this is a useful example, but it's an example. So this will take and replace 0 with get math, that string or variable, and then it'll replace 1 with $_. $_ in this case, because I'm in a catch block, is the actual error, right? So it's going to report back the error exception for me. And then it's going to execute null, and then it's going to basically output nothing. And I can do this if C is not equal to null, then I can output that. So in this case, if I do this without verbose, first and foremost, I get nothing, right? Or I can say, just so I can show us that it's actually doing some work, I can say, so now let me run this. So I get back is nothing in my function. So something happened, I don't know what, I don't have an error because I swallowed it, because I intend my function not to hard error like this, but I want to see what's going on. So verbose, and now there's the actual error in that get math attempted to divide by 0. So again, now I can see in this particular case, if I add the verbose switch, that now I can use that. So this is the point where we got to last time with like PowerShell 102, just to review, because we've had other subjects. Writing modules, getting advanced modules, and moving into something like this. Now, from here, and so, I mean, hopefully you guys know, this is like my function up here, and this was just code I was executing like outside, right, of the function. Normally, this potentially wouldn't be in the same file. So how do I get this reusable? How do I get the code that I need to execute, which is this stuff from 17 to 22, outside of the file where my function is, right? How do I get that function to be truly reusable? Well, that's where we start talking about modules. We're going to put functions inside of a module. So one of the things, I'm going to make this just a little smaller so I have room. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have this file. And let's take a quick look back here at our PowerPoint just to make sure. So why modules, right? Because they provide reuse of functionality. We're able to scale with modules as well, and they're versionable. That's one of the biggest things that can come in handy. Otherwise, you just have a bunch of scripts, and good luck if you know which one is which sitting on some admin share. Oh wait, I put the newer one on this server. Oh crap, I executed the wrong one against prod. Oops. So that's never happened. So before we get into writing them, let's look at ones that already exist and how we can use them, how we can find them. Now, what I'm going to show you is this window. And I'm going to try to make this nice and big for us here. I did not ahead of time increase my font, but let's try. I'll see that okay? Okay. You know what? I'll make that one bigger because that's actually still pretty. There we go. Okay. So I can. Okay. Apparently, audio is going through my. That's awesome. Oh God. Okay. So with the latest PowerShell, PowerShell 5, I believe, basically you can get it if you have, actually it's PowerShell 4 and the Windows Management Framework 5. You can now, you'll have the one Git client and be able to pull and look at stuff from the PowerShell gallery. So there's a couple of commands. So let's first look and let's go look for module. Okay, so here's a couple of commands that we can use for modules. Some of the ones that we're going to look at here is find module. There is install module. There is a save module as well, and also there's get installed module. Get module also is an alias for that. So when you see my slide, I just remembered it's get module. It is get installed module. Find is the one that actually goes out to the gallery itself. So we'll take a look at these. And you can see on the right the source that the PowerShell Git is the ones that are actually coming from the PowerShell gallery or from the one Git client. I have some other stuff in here, build helpers, PESTER, stuff like that have additional things. So let's take a look at Git module. This shows me what is currently loaded in my session. So right now I have pretty much the standard stuff that comes out of the box on any time you load up the shell. So this is pretty much it. I might have a couple things here loaded. I think PS readline is an additional thing I have. Not entirely sure because it's not Microsoft namespace. I'm doubting it's from them. It's probably from something else I've installed. Those show me my installed modules. Same thing as get installed modules. So find module. I don't recommend ever doing this, but if you want to open yourself up to a glutton for punishment, and since I'm demoing it, this will go out to the PowerShell gallery and list every single PowerShell module that is accessible there. And it will keep going. And that is only because that's the only source that I have locally defined. That's out of the box. That's the only source it goes to. I believe that's the only source that really is useful right now, but it is extendable. So if you're familiar with like NPM or any other type of installer where you can configure different sources, or Chocolatey for Windows, you can install multiple sources. So that's the same type of thing where you can install multiple source repositories for it to go look at getting assets. So you could have your own internal one, which you can do. They're just NuGet galleries. Yeah, this might literally take forever. So I'm just going to stop. These, they are NuGet packages. So they are stored as a compiled asset that this client knows how to download, extract, put in the right places if you use the commandlets here. So these are all, it's just Microsoft's way they package stuff as NuGets. That it's been around for forever. They're basically zip files. Manifest, like pretty much everything else on the planet when it comes to packages. So I'll use my example I was looking for, if I can type. So I'm going to find module, and I'm just going to do git, because I was looking for module. I wrote my own module. I started to. Whoops, sorry. Yeah, you don't need it. I think I just have to use an asterisk. Yeah. So I, like a dummy, wrote my own and started investigating how to communicate with PowerShell to Git API. Got it working, and then I'm like, I wonder if there's stuff out in the gallery. When I did this demo, I'm like, crap. There's only like, 10 or whatever there are. So I'm like, well, okay, great. And look, there's all kinds of good stuff. So one of the easiest ways to find stuff, I would recommend when you do find something, make sure it's being updated frequently, because there's a lot of old stuff there too that just got kind of ported from like Codeplex. Make sure it works, test it. So depends on what you need, but yeah, GitHub is a package management. Yeah, I'm scared. So this is one way to find these. So why not? We'll get this Git helper. I have no idea what this is going to do to my machine, but hey, I'm willing to try. So what we're going to do for Git helper is there's two things. We can install a module, and it'll just put it on my machine. Or I can actually save a module, and it will then be put into a destination that I want to save the actual module files. If I wanted to download it and redistribute it, or say I had a admin share, or even better, an asset manager, like, I don't know, Artifactory or something like that, that I want to keep a copy of this, I could push it up into there. Yes, you can actually pick Artifactory to, cache this type of stuff, because it's just a NuGet package. So let's try Git helper. So I'm just going to try installing it first. And we're going to call Git. No idea what this is going to do to me. You're installing modules from an untrusted repository. Yes, sure, of course. Install it on my machine. So this just downloaded it, and it put it into a certain particular path. That path, and we'll look at this here in a little bit too, because it's important, is as a path that PowerShell knows about where to find these. So it just downloaded this, stuck it in one of those paths. We'll look at that a little bit later, and made it available so that we can actually call this. So if I did my old command of git command and module, this is how I can find all of the functions that are now inside of this module that I just downloaded. I can see aliases, I can see functions. So just say, get me everything that's related to this module, Git helper. Here they are. So apparently I can do a whole bunch of stuff. So these are a bunch of different things. These are all functions now. Just like my little get math function, these are all functions that are written, that are sitting in a module file. I installed it, I can now use it. So if you're like, hey, if you need to do something with GitHub, you can tell somebody to go install GitHub, install the module, Git helper in this case, and utilize those functions. Now, this, as you notice, also has a version. So if you tell somebody, well, you need to make sure you have version 1.0.1, not 1.0.0 to make sure this works, you can do that. If you want to have dependencies and all those types of things, you can go that far with modules. You can actually say, my module won't install or work or load unless this other one is installed. So we'll look at that too, how we can do all of that. So they are pretty full functioned as far as modules go, with a lot of the metadata and how they work. So if I didn't want this anymore, so if I just do a git module, Notice PowerShell Git and Git Helper are now, and package management are all now in my, they're all now in my installed modules. So I can remove those if I want. If I no longer want them in my memory stack, I can remove them. Why, might you ask? Well, if I'm developing a module and I put it into memory, it's in memory, it's loaded. Well, if I make a change, I have to remove it and load the new version in. Otherwise, it's still sitting there. So this is very common, like if you have tools that you've downloaded, like PowerCLI from VMware, right? It loads when you boot your shell up if you've installed it on your system. Well, if you install a new version, you're going to have to close PowerShell and open PowerShell because it has to reload what's been loaded into memory. So if you're developing, remove is going to also be your friend. So remove, let me, what the, okay. Cool screen effect there. I really don't know. And now I'm just saying git helper. And now if I do the same command, let me clear. Notice it's no longer there. It removed that out of my in-memory running modules. If I can't reference, if I were to do the git command, it's still there because this module is sitting on my laptop now, and it knows where to find that. So I can ask it, hey, what's in this? Because it's on my system still. I didn't delete the file, I just unloaded it from memory. Now, because it's in a known location to PowerShell, it knows how to import this. I don't have to give it the path. I don't know where it saved it when I told it to import it, but I'm going to go ahead and import it again, and now it's done. It didn't have to re-download because it's still on my physical machine. Where that is, I think, we'll see if I'm right. It's in one of many locations. It's one of 2 locations. Documents, Windows PowerShell, modules, nope. Program files. So it's in that. It might also be no, it's 64. Could also be so. Let's see if we can find this. Ported it. So let's do this. Okay, and I know this is small. Sorry for the small. Not that I can really resize. I don't think I can resize this. So here in temp, I told it to download this in my temp folder here. It downloaded a module, and the way the module is done is there's a folder called Git Helper, which is the module. The version that is here, if you download and install different versions, you'll actually have folders of the previous versions. It knows to always pull the latest, but if you have over time just imported multiple versions, they'll all be sitting here. And then here's the actual guts. Now there's some other additional guts in here because it's from the gallery, so in order to publish, there's additional stuff. Just like if you go to Puppet or you go to Ansible or other places where you're going to contribute back to the community, there's guidelines of what you have to include: a README file, a change log, a this or that. So all that stuff's here. But the crux of it is there's 2 files, and we'll be looking at that next. What makes up a module? Yep. So there it is. It was in Windows PowerShell. Haha. Okay. Oh, because I looked in PowerShell, not Windows PowerShell. Sorry. I have PowerShell Core installed as well as Windows PowerShell, and my brain goes to Core instead of Windows for whatever reason. So there's the path for it. Yes. So okay, so the question was, you mentioned you can point to Starter Factory. Have you ever? I haven't pointed this OneGit client. However, believe there is. I'd have to. It might just be NuGet actually. Oh, I'd have to double check what the command is in order to add sources, because there's ways to talk to PowerShells. You know what? Hold on. There, I think it's yes, OneGit. There's a command just like you would. I can show you what it is with Chocolatey. Choco sources. Whoops, that's helpful. So Chocolatey is NuGet under the hood. It's just a NuGet, and believe it or not, you can point OneGit at Chocolatey package sources too to do installs and stuff like that. So I have a bunch of different things here for Chocolatey. And the way I can say sources, I can just tell it add name, URL, boom, put it in, done. And now my client knows to go look there. I can tell it specifically this source versus that source. There's ways, and I think, let's see, git command module. Let's see if there is a get module. Nope. PowerShell git. Let's just look at that. Verb noun module. There's a way to do, and I can look if we take a break or afterwards. I can look to see what it is, but it should be as simple as actually just saying pointing it, and then basically in Artifactory or others, you'd have to set up a NuGet feed, right? And then once you have the NuGet feed, as long as you have those published as appropriate NuGets, then you should be able to point it to that, and it should be able to see your own internal packages just like anything else. And NuGet libraries can be file paths. Like they don't, NuGet galleries don't have to be a full-on Artifactory. As far as I know, a NuGet gallery can be a file share. It can just be a UNC path. So you don't have to have full-on software. But yes, and I did do this with Chocolatey, so now Chocolatey is running completely out of Artifactory. So, yay! And I wrote code to actually automatically push up new packages. So, okay, so we've taken a look at some of these commands. Let me hop back over to, our little thing here. So we looked at get, find, save, import, and remove. Those are our friends with modules and pulling them from the gallery, and utilizing them. Are there any questions on this stuff so far? We good? Good, okay. So what's in a module? So let's take a look at how we can start building our own and why. But first part in a module is a PSM1. So instead of just PS1, we've got PSM1. A PSM1 basically has a whole bunch of functions in it. When you execute that file, actually you can't execute that file. You, like ISE, can't actually execute a PSM file. You can't run a PSM file. There's nothing to execute. You have to import a module. So that PSM1 is all of your code. You do not have to have anything else. That could be all you use. And for a lot of teams, that's as far as they'll ever go with a module. If they're a small team, if they don't have a lot of CI/CD practices, if they don't have a repository, an artifact repository like Artifact or ProGit or anything like that, they'll have these sitting out in a network share in a folder, and they'll just pull them onto the box or load them from there if they can with trust. That might be as far as any team gets. And that's okay. At least it's somewhat centralized. Kind of. The next step is to actually fully go into building descriptors. It's where you get a lot more functionality. These are the manifests. They're called PowerShell data files. So a PowerShell data file, the PSD one, is actually what you import if you only have these two files. If you don't set up a full folder structure, if you don't set up everything else, you put these two together and you import the literal path to this PSD1. Not the best way, because you're not doing versioning, you're not doing a bunch of other things, but again, it's just kind of the next step. Who made it? What version is it? Again, that requires your team to maintain that information and not just update the function and go back to the code and not update this file. So it really depends. Now, the nice thing with PSD1 is if you have, for whatever reason, you have a whole bunch of scripts that you want to load, or a whole bunch of modules rather, that you want to load. Hey, when I'm on the Exchange box, I want to load my Exchange and Active Directory module. Okay, you can have a PSD1 that just loads both. You can load multiple modules within one data file. Don't know that I necessarily recommend that, but it is possible. There's nesting. There's all kinds of crazy stuff, which I don't think I will ever in my career get to that. To be honest, that's just not needed at this level. I'm sure inside of some place as complex as Microsoft, when you have something like 3,800 commands in Windows PowerShell, you probably need it. But not in a normal, I wouldn't say in a normal company. Other things that can be included, I've seen this for, oh goodness, what was it? Oh, almost all of the examples, except for the one that I found and used, to take any type of output, CSV type of output or a hash in PowerShell and export it to an XLS T, to an Excel file, whatever it is, not T, but just an XLS, right? Whatever the new extension is for Excel. X, thank you, Jesus. Too many things in my head. They all included an assembly. They had to use a .NET assembly to do the work. And they include that as part of the module that comes along with it. They have their PSM one, the PSD one, and this assembly. And when you load it, it loads the .NET assembly like a normal .NET application would. But in this case, it's PowerShell. So you can do those things. There are examples of them out there. If you're not wanting to run random assemblies that people package with their module, be careful because it can and you won't know unless you look at it. If you just do import, that GitHub one that I just did, or the Git helper, there might have been a DLL in there that I just arbitrarily ran, and I have no way to inspect that code. So always check first. So there's that, and then a directory. And you might say, why? Well, the directory structure is actually pretty critical for modules because it's not a compiled asset sitting on your machine. It's broken out into its pieces. Now, it is when it's up on the gallery just for ease of downloading and getting it, but once it's extracted and put onto your machine, it is broken out into different things. We saw that it is a name, a folder that is the name of the module. Inside there are the versions, semantic versioning, 1.0.0, or 1.x.x.x. Those will sit in that named folder, and then inside of each of those is going to be the guts of that version, which will include the PSM, PSD, any supporting files, such. So I have some links in here as well. If you guys look at the slide deck, I'll post the link afterwards. That link to Microsoft's what is in a module. There's way more, but these are kind of the four big pieces. So, simple module. Let's go back to that thing I was writing, the get math. So I'm going to make a module out of my little function here. So if I go back over to here, oh, I really blew that up a lot. We're going to shrink this a little here. So if I want to take this function that I have here, and I want to make that a module, because maybe I want to expand my get math and I actually want to have more than one function. I'm going to go ahead and take this. I'm going to take it out of this script that I have. I'm going to paste it over here, and then I'm going to paste again, but I'm going to call it get divide and get multiply. Sure. And then I, of course, have to be good, and because I renamed those, have my error handling. So now I have this file. I'm going to save it. I'm going to go save it. I'm going to save it in this temp folder that I was using before. And we're going to delete that guy. And we're just going to call this math.psm1. Now, modules do not follow the get blah, 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 the verb dash noun syntax. Those are just functions. So my functions are get dash multiply, but my module is whatever. So for naming standards, like for internal stuff, we put our company initials in front of it so we know it's ours, name spacing, it doesn't conflict with anything. We even go as far, just because somebody else somewhere might have written a function like this, it's good practice. Put your company name in front of it or something, right? You know, so I can PSAKE, maybe that's better. Again, that's just something we follow. I don't know if that's great words of wisdom from other people, and I don't know if Mr. Lombardi probably would say, what you should probably do is being fully qualifying your functions. I know that's actually what he would say, and he'd probably be very happy for me saying that. I don't. It's just not a practice I got into, but you can, and you probably should. But I'm going to save this. This is now my module. So get PSAKE divide and get PSAKE multiply. So back here, since I know my path is dtemp math PSM1, I can import this. Import module. And I'm going to do it the very hard way, okay? Because I have to import it like this. Now, I can do something else here, and I can say, force. So this will re-import that every single time. So if I make a change and re-import it, it'll pick up the changes. This works most of the time. So if I run this, it's going to fail because I don't have, well, it'll not fail because in this memory scope, I've already loaded my function once before, the old get math. However, if I take this piece and run it, notice that it loads, it doesn't complain, it found the module, it installed it. If I actually do get command, module, math, yeah, that's a really bad module name. There's my two functions, get PSAKE divide and get PSAKE multiply. So just like we saw from theirs, notice I don't have a version, it's 0.0 because I didn't tell it a version. There's some things missing if I do it this way from all the neat functionality that you get with doing it the right way. But it's there. So I'll go ahead and use it. Get PSAKE divide. Boom, there we go. And if I take out verbose, whoa, not the whole thing, please. I get back is nothing. So there's my little piece of code. I can get this back and it works. So now I have this module sitting there out in my disk. I don't have all of the function stuff here. So before, we had all these functions, and then maybe at the bottom of that whole script that we were running, we put some code to execute it. This code, like line 3 to 8. Yeah. No. So what's being returned? Yep. So if I just do this and go super. So right now, nothing is coming back because I'm getting an error. So I return null over here. The answer was, is nothing coming from my module, but here is this, right? So I'm returning null. So I have a state of the math didn't work, therefore I don't have a number. Because if I initialize a number, I still get 0, which may be a valid answer, but null is definitely not. So I return null, which the only reason I wrote nothing is because null doesn't display well. So if I actually have a 2 divided by 9, I could have picked better math here, but hey, you get the idea. Yes. So the question is, would my verbose output from my module carry over here? And yes, it would, if I had a division of 0 when it errors. So there you go. There's my error. It's really depending on what you're trying to prevent or have happen. If the question was if you're trying to do try or catch earlier or later, it really depends on what you're doing. Now, I wrap my entire function in a try catch, and that's my unhandled exception. I log, now that's only because in a lot of the stuff I do, I can log to like Splunk, or I can log somewhere, and I've written a whole thing to do that. So if I'm running PowerShell as part of an automation, I'm logging automatically to someplace else. That's why I put a try catch global. But then inside there, for things that are much more specific, you can nest to them. I can have another much more specific try catch. And there's ways, you can look it up. There's plenty of it documented out there. There's ways to handle, like, hey, if I get a divide by 0 error, I can trap just that error type and actually do a different thing than if it just generally failed. So you can get more, or, So the question is, can you do custom return codes or custom error messages? Yes. So this is just because I happen to put this message here. Right. So this is here. What I can do is maybe I didn't want to do this, right? Maybe I can write verbose, but then I want to do throw, and now, what? So yes, throw will do that. Throw will actually cause the pipeline to stop. So in a lot of stuff I do, I will throw to get an error message out to the stream that's specific, because again, I'm catching all of that anyway. Plus, I'm running PowerShell through Jenkins because I get the entire console output of my automation in Jenkins, which is nice. Plus, I have something that can run forever or run long periods of time, and it's been working quite well as just a way to run PowerShell and have an API that I can run via posting. So, and it's free. So in this case, now I have a module. Very simple, right? I have, we'll do that. So I get my output. Notice verbose does nothing, because even in my clean output, I get nothing. So the reason that you might want to do this is because maybe I want to do this. Now, there's ways to do this differently, and we could do this a whole session on just functions, but we kind of did some. Nope, 5. So divide, then multiply. The output of this is going to be this PS object, or PS item, rather. This is just shorthand to $PS item. It's the value from the pipeline. I could have annotated this function, this variable right here. There's ways to annotate and say, value from pipeline so that it automatically would take that, so I didn't have to specify one. There's ways to do that. There's probably a lot of commands that are like that, where you can put like this. Because, you know, I need quotes around a string in. So there's get AD user. That I just gave it a string, piped it to this. I didn't specify the parameter because one of them is set up, which is the identity, the name of who I'm looking for, as the accept value from pipeline, which is what this is doing. But this should work too. Or it won't. Because of the way it is, it's not taking pipelines because I didn't annotate it. So, of course, in my example here, so I actually do need to go annotate that in order for that to work. But so I now have a module, very, very simple, but I have to hard code tell it where. Not the best thing in the world. I was able to do import module get helper without an issue. Why was that more special than this? So let's quickly turn back over. So that's because of this guy, PS module path. It's a lot easier if you put these in PowerShell's known locations. An environment variable. It's just a path variable, just like your path variable on every system that's been since Windows, whatever. 5. DOS maybe even had path. Maybe. Yeah, probably did. So this is just like that, but it's the place where PowerShell will go look for the start of a module, the folder, right? So it's going to look for a folder in these locations that are here. Some of the 2 recommended paths, if you're going to do company or user provided, is either the one in your local directory, your documents, Windows PowerShell, or documents PowerShell if you're using core, or C program files, Windows PowerShell. I wrote it here and didn't go to it myself, modules. So core does get rid of the Windows. Everything else is just PowerShell. Simple, easy way to programmatically add stuff to the path, because adding stuff to path is idiotic and stupid. I don't know if 2016 server actually changes this or not. The UI changes it because it's now, I think they're just splitting on semicolon in the path, because now they give you a grid in 2016 server where it's each path that you modify is its own line, as opposed to just a string of God knows what. So rather than put in something twice, not somebody, but the PowerShell community extensions actually have this path variable, these functions in the module community extension. So it lets you do any path variable, not just the path variable, but the path variable for PS module path. So I'm going to move my stuff now. All right, so I have this math guy here, and we're going to take him, and I'm going to go put him in my documents. The Windows PowerShell versus PowerShell, same, yeah. I'm going to put him in a folder called math, which is horrible. New folder, 1.0.0, sure. And I'm going to dump him right there. So, yeah. So this is the hierarchy of how you define a module sitting on a folder path is the folder name, version, and then the guts inside the version. Now, if you actually package this up and actually publish a module and do the actual work to make it, like, this is how it'll come back installed. That's just how it will look. Now that this is sitting here, what I'm going to do So I'm not going to worry about that. And I'm going to actually close this ISE window. I'm not going to save changes. Go back over here, and I'm going to open up a new, so fresh memory, right? If I did a git PSUG, my stuff isn't loaded, right? Okay. And if we do git module or not, notice it's not loaded. Math isn't loaded. Wonderful name. However, not that one. This should fail. So the reason is because I only have one piece. Leave. I need another. And the easiest way to do this, and we'll get into this, is, and we'll show you. So it's how do we build one? And in order to get this to work in the path, we need to actually do a data file. We need to define a module so that when PowerShell looks into this, it actually knows that this is a module. Right now, it's just a PSM1 file sitting in a folder, and it says, that doesn't help me. Because it's looking for things very specifically in that module's folder. It's looking for things that are, you know what? No, that should, yeah. It's looking for things, it's looking for a descriptor, a data file, rather, a manifest, in order for it to be able to automatically know and load that module. So we have to do some of this stuff. There's a link here, and I'll see if I can pop that up while we're right here. There's a ton. I know this is small, but all of this that you're seeing in this grid, these are all the things that can go into it. And there's just a lot. And whether or not you need it, don't know. But they also give you a simple manifest, like a template, but you don't even need that. Good, decent knowledge to have of where this is. However, one of the things we can do is turn the easy mode on, and there is a command called new module manifest. So I'm going to, whoops, meant to not do that. Nope, cool, yay. So I'm going to go over to my PowerShell window over here. I'm going to go to this D drive, go to my temp folder, and there's math. So new module manifest. There's a couple of things. There's path, nested modules. There's all these different features that are part of what's in a module. But the only thing I need to actually give it is name. And I don't even have to, it's just right here is the identity. So I can just call it math. Oops. I thought I could. Oh. Oh. Yes. You have to give it the name of a file, the data file, the manifest that you want to create. So sitting here in this directory, ./math, I'm sitting here in this particular item. Let's open that up with the ISE, just so we can see it a little easier. So manifest for module math generated by my currently logged in user on the date. A lot of this is just arbitrary, that is just here. You can actually have supported versions. So if you're like, hey, I need PowerShell 5 for this to be able to run, don't import it otherwise. You can actually put that in here. Randomly generated GUID that is unique, company name, all this kind of good stuff. Here's the PowerShell version I was talking about. .NET frameworks, all kinds. So .NET framework, remember I told you you could just load assemblies? super helpful if you're going to load assembly and you want to ensure certain .NET version is installed on the machine prior to loading your .NET assembly. You'll see some of those actually have that in there. There's a bunch of other stuff. We'll get into some of these here in a second, like functions to export. We'll get into all of those. A lot of this is just other stuff that's in here. A lot of stuff is in here as well for the gallery that you'll never use unless you publish. So that's all I'm going to do. The only thing that I think is really in here that's needed, I'm going to trim this all out so we don't have it, just because. Don't. Private data, therefore I do not need it. Okay. So really only those top two here are needed if you're going to not worry about the rest of it, but I'm going to leave those for later. And what? Yeah, it set it to 1.0. That's just its default, and you can override that on the new module manifest. There's a thought there's a version. Okay, I lied. Maybe there's not a version. Oh, yes, it is. Module version. I always forget that it's module version, not just straight up version. So it's there. You can specify it. Now, prod. I don't know if it's going to pick up math. Okay. Nope. Oh, you're right. Thank you. Copy it over. Oh, hey, look at that. Temp. So there's this little handy command called refresh env, by the way, that refreshes your environment variables. Like it. I don't know if it'll actually work, but we'll try it. Yeah. So let's first off, so env colon ps module path is the module path to all of those things. So users, Maglio K, documents, Windows PowerShell, modules. So let's just make sure I've got my So let's go look at this here. So this should be our guy, and we should be able to say import. Should, oops. Oh, wait. Has to be act. Well, it's in my definition. Documents. Has to match version to folder. That's something that the packaging does. I'm trying to do this freehand, so it gets a little more complex. However, now if I do git command and I say module math, notice I have no functions that came from my math module. So there's a couple of things that need to be looked at. Let me close this. Wrong folder again. Let's actually go right to my documents and PowerShell, modules, math, 1.0. So I can close you. So a couple of things here. Line 6, I'm not exporting any functions. So therefore, none of my functions are exported. So now I do not have to do this. I can do that if I really want to. So if I do this, and let's go back over to here and remove module math. If I type git p PowerShell user group multiply, nothing, right? I don't get any tab completions here. And it doesn't know. However, if I come in here and I give it the name, what PowerShell will do is this nifty thing, if it doesn't make a liar out of me, no, but I might have to reload my environment. Maybe. So this should be git PSAKE. Oh wait, I might have to actually type it out. Post the load. So what should happen here is if I, so what that should do is, I might have to do that export function star down here. I know what I can look at though. Guys, give me 1 second. I can make sure I get that syntax right for you. Oh, come on, clear. Well, so what it's supposed to do is, and it might just be because I'm not reloading my actual ISE. That was the whole problem. Yeah, so there it is. It's because I'm not reloading my entire shell. I thought refresh environment would pick that up for me. It's not. So if I would just do this and open up a new shell. So git module. I don't have it loaded, right? No module loaded, no math module, and git command star PSUG. This one it found because I had typed it. And divide, right? Oops. So this one it's not finding. It is finding git PSAKE multiply. So let's take a look why. Right? So that's exactly what should happen. So I only exported this one function, so it only knew how to find that one function. If I do star, oops, it won't know either way. So if I, again, close this window, open up a new window, and we do get PSUG, I don't get any tab completion. It doesn't know where those functions are. So if you want to make it, the whole reason I bring this up, and it's a nice feature if you go this far. If you're going this far, define module manifests, data files that have module versions, goods. You're going to track that. You're going to put it in GitHub. You're going to have a way to release it or give it out to people. If you push it out to your systems, you have some way to do, push this out, config management, Puppet, Chef, Ansible, whatever. Do it yourself, DSC. Open up PowerShell and push it out via PowerShell. I don't care. But if you put it on the system and you put it in a certain directory and you go that route to put all of your functions and define it this way, the nice thing is that if I do get PSUG, multiply, and we do this back, open up a new window. Oh, okay, so, really? None of them? Thank you. And I found out the other thing, oh, it doesn't work here. Okay, is in Linux, I didn't know about the LL command. I'm like, what's LL? They're like, yeah, simple things. I was hoping they would have had it here, but because I have LS, this, yeah, anyway. So the idea is if I have all of those functions defined that are in my module, and I distribute this out, it's on my systems. When somebody goes to do this and they say A is 3 and B is whatever 8, they don't have, it'll auto load this module the minute you call a function that it knows about. Yeah. If I can spell things right. So it, oh. And since that one's the only one there, so apparently I screwed something up because now it doesn't want to work. So that's the whole reason that you would do this and actually define your functions to export. There's weird things too that you can do in your module files, like variables. You can set kind of like, hey, when you load this, a variable is going to be loaded into the stack for you, and it'll be set. Your aliases, if you want to export aliases, it's just weird. There's some things you can do with aliases that, because you can define aliases on your functions, and then you can expose those aliases through the export. And you have to do that if you want your aliases. However, if you put a new alias in here and it's not on a function, it's going to be like, no. So you have to match it up. You have to know what you're doing with aliases. You have to have it on the function and here to export it. Otherwise, if you know what you're going to call and you don't want, you're not too worried about it, you tell people, look, you have to import these modules in order to get them to work, just like import module Active Directory, then here you go. But the whole idea with these modules is just like this. If I said, I haven't loaded the Active Directory PowerShell, but it does right there in order to make this work. So it would do that with my module too. That's the whole benefit of specifying these functions to export, is it actually will load that module. Yes. So how would you do that? Oh, start. Yes. Well, yeah. So the comment was that you can just specify the functions you want to export and hide the other ones. It won't actually put them out there. And yes, very true. The other thing you can do that I snuck here at the very bottom of this module is this: the export module member function star. Um, I can do this. See, now it's not loading my entire. Fine. Um, there is. I haven't gone hunting for it. I don't know why that's not, but I've done this type of thing. So if I want to have like internal functions, I just don't put them in my naming standard, and then functions inside that can call it, and functions can call my other functions that are private. But so let's go back to this. So that's the new module manifest gets us the ability to create those things and allows us to build those modules. And so we kind of did. So this is really where I kind of want to. We can ask questions. We can go into more examples. We can look at some of the other things I've done. Where I want to kind of end this one is saying basically building these and doing these this way seems probably like a lot of work and may not seem very intuitive, especially if you're used to, if I look at Dave and I know he's Mr. CI/CD, right? He knows these processes. He's done this with other languages. This seems very hard to manually go do all of this and build this and put this in locations. There's ways which we can look at tooling for PowerShell, which is what we'll look at in like the next session, unless something else pops up. But like PowerShell 104 is how to do all of this and build modules cleanly, easily in the right folder structure, ready for you to either copy somewhere or package if you want to package them into NuGets, using tools like PSAKE and PESTER. PESTER is for testing. Also PS build variables, I believe. So those are like, there's tools, and PSAKE is just like all the other cake, make, bake, rig, those types of things that they auto generate, they auto compile. So now when you run certain things, and I can give you an example, we won't get into everything about it, but this is where we're going with this next, is there we go. So what this actually is doing is building. You might go, what? PowerShell isn't like compiled like a C# language or something. No, you're right, it's not. But what it is doing is it's compiling what I have built out in pieces into one module, a definition, a version, all of that's tracked. Get me, README, all these other things are there. And it's also running tests. And in my case, it's actually building a zip file because I want to distribute via zip instead of NuGet because screw NuGets. It's just me. Actually, the reason I'm not doing NuGets is because I'm actually taking this and I'm uploading it as a release into GitHub because I'm using GitHub as a way to release these rather than putting it to something like Artifactory or something else because I didn't want to go that route. This. So we'll look at what this is doing and how this is working I'll have an example, but it's using stuff like PESTER, PSAKE, build helpers, PS script analyzer, PS deploy, and the PowerShell community extensions. So it's using all of those to facilitate taking, and because it's easier to show you here because it's larger, in source, right, we have functions. So I'll go into functions. Oops. I have public. You can do public, private. And in here, I have each individual function is its own file, rather than having a module that's huge and has all these individual things. Think about a team. If you start writing a whole bunch of stuff for Active Directory, your module file with all your functions is going to get huge, right? It just is what it is. Microsoft's module files are huge. Now they break it out and do nested and crazy shit, so because theirs would be just unwieldy huge. But even mine, when we started writing stuff and we had functions on the Windows team, our Active Directory one, our Exchange one got really, really big. And so now you have 5 people in there managing and modifying this one file. It can get kind of crazy. And then you're talking about version control. Everybody's editing the same file. No. So what this does is gives us an attempt to break those out into individual functions and compile those into a module when we're ready to release. So it allows us to store each individual function as a script, basically, inside of Git. But then when we're ready to make a new version and release it, we can compile it into a module, and that's where this is going, why we want to go to modules, because then you actually get something that's a releasable asset rather than like file. It just gets really bad. I mean, some of ours are scrolling. So I think if at some of the old, yep, have anything proprietary in it, so I don't really care. But oh, I don't know. Scroll. This is a module file, and I'm still scrolling, and yeah, I don't really like this at all. Just because it gets really bad to start managing and having multiple people, even though that's in GitHub. This is not the right way to do it. So, and even worse is I have all of these in the same repo. So now all this PowerShell code sitting in GitHub, one person changes it and the whole repo, right? They're all working out of one repo. So there's collision. Oh, are you ready to put your stuff out yet? Oh, no. Oh, well, I have to push my stuff. Well, my stuff sitting in Exchange isn't ready to go yet, but my stuff in AD is. So now I can't manage that. So if I made these individual repos, each of these its own repo, but then above and beyond that, each of the functions separate files, then it allows teams to work better. So it just depends too on your team size. If it's like you and another guy, this is probably fine. Throw your modules in here, GitHub, they're source controlled. You can put Git on a server, or you can use another way and pull the stuff out and push it to the server. DSC. If you get more advanced where I've got 4 different teams, probably about 30 people. At any given point, some people, 1 or 2 people on different teams are modifying their stuff sitting in this folder, this GitHub repository, and it gets wieldy, and they're already like, God, can you fix it? No. But it gets much easier when you start splitting stuff out into this, which these are, instead of having these 4, Snap Control, Core, Crypto, Remote, those 4 are modules. inside of each of those, like core, you have source, functions, public, and then you have this stuff. And we'll get into all of this structure, but just know that's the next step, is to go from looking at what modules are and you seeing this and going, man, this is a lot. Why would I go this step? Well, I can tell you we're at this step because we're getting people conflicting with just throwing everything in one big share. So that's kind of where we're at. Are there any questions about modules, things you guys want to know? Yeah. So let me rephrase so I can just make sure. So these guys on the horn can hear in the recording. So the question was, if you have a whole bunch of functions that are just for this one thing that you're doing, what's the worth in making it a module and going forward with it, right? Or, oh, specialize it, not, okay. So the question is more around, how do you know when to go to a module if it's something generic or if it's so specific to just that particular use case you're using it for? I would say if you're writing a function because you're taking in different parameters, then it probably, in my book, could probably be a module, right? Now, will you get a lot of use out of updating that module? Will you have a lot of versions? Maybe not. But in my case, I never write functions and scripts. If I'm going to go do something, it's almost always either I'm in the command line or maybe the ISE and I'm just hashing out a quick script because it's a one-off. That's where I do that, and then I'm done. I just throw it away. I never use it again, right? So that's if I just need to get something, output it into one format from another, go find some stuff, research some stuff, do a task, I'm good. That's usually, to me, a script. I don't make a function. I don't take the time or effort to even parameterize it, make it a function. No, not worth it to me. If, however, there's going to be, we're doing it this one time. However, I could see us needing to do this again. If I start writing a function or I need to parameterize things because, hey, this value may change today, then I'm probably going to go forward with a module. I pretty much am script or module. Now, do I go full on PSD? No, not all the time. Should I? Probably. But I will at least make a PSM one and have something that I can import via direct path. So here's this module, put it here, load it, and now you have all these functions, because then it's an entity of functionality together. Yep. Out. Yeah. So in that case, like if you have so the thing was in his case, he's in a script writing a function that at the top, parses basically and returns HTML, but it's different for each time you're using that source, right? As far as you change it.
It's the code is specialized for
each job. Time you run a report or pull that data. For this, it's this way. You make another script, it's this way. So now you have to change the way it parses or displays the HTML.
Right. And why I'm going through this is I wrote. Well, I didn't actually write. I stole from the internet LDAP commands, and I now I have spread across 2/3 of my environment LDAP searches, and they're all tweaked for that specific job. And I'm saying here, I really need to go. There's that LASS module. I need to go and standardize against that, because then I'm not worrying about, oh, I set the parameters this way on that one and that way on that one.
Right.
Um,
So,
well, right, and I have a library that I've affectionately created for a lot of that common code.
yeah, so you definitely in that case where you have a lot of common code, a module is fits very well, right? If you also then had, let's say, an LDAP module, and let's say, and this is just a thought, and depends on how you manage those 30 some odd or 50 some odd places where you have that LDAP search, how you got it on that machine in the first place, right?
Right.
You have some way to put it on that machine or update it on that machine. If you had a module that had every permutation to date of your function, right, and you named that function differently, or maybe the function just took a parameter that said type, and you had your different types have a switch statement, and that function just gets a different type every time you do that. Now, the nice thing, if anything should fundamentally change across every single one, you've got one place.
Right, and that's
right.
Been the function of my library up to this point is that, oh, I need to search this endpoint. Well, I have a function in there that sets it up and executes the search because I know how that endpoint behaves.
Yes. So your common is definitely a module, right? That definitely makes sense to have your common library as a module. If you have stuff that acts upon that library and does something specific for this particular case, you don't necessarily have to have it. But if you're doing a lot of functionality, like if you're writing functions on top of the core outside of that, it's not that it's going to hurt. It just depends on how you want to actually manage. Like if you have a method to get stuff to your boxes, DSC, Puppet, Ants, whatever. If you have an easy way to distribute them, then there's no harm in sticking with what you have, because you can push out an update.
That's the bad on my part. I've had this one machine that sits in virtual host, and it's 2008 R2. It's stuck around for the better part. I've been at the company, so I've never had to distribute it. I'm the only one up till a year ago. I've been only the one monkeying with those scripts. So if somebody screwed up, relating to them, might as well just tell them you're an idiot.
Yeah.
So the last 6 months, I've been a concerted effort to try to take those that entire code base and save it into a GitLab server. Mm-hmm. That way I have traceability.
Sure. And there's plenty of stuff that we have that's code sitting in executable format in GitHub, right? So not everything has to be a function.
The biggest problem is now is my 2008 server is now long in its tooth. It's time to move on to 2016. Yep. And I need to actually start bundling this together and dot sourcing a script file on a specific path. It breaks.
Yeah. So that is one nice thing that you would get with a module. Remember, if you have to, you can add additional paths. So if you're like, look, I'm going to just stick this in C:\_scripts. At least you know a hard-coded path on every machine that's exactly the same. But again, it comes down to also how you're going to distribute. If you have still one server, then you're okay. If you're going to distribute them on your whole sea of servers, then that's a different thing. So
right. The goal is to keep everything maintained within the cloistered server network. So
Gotcha.
The whole point the script server exists is because it's at a trifecta of all they can actually reach to. Firewall boys have gotten really buddy. Yeah, I need to talk to that.
Yep. Oh yeah, ACLs are fun, aren't they? Yeah, I mean, it really is kind of what's going to make the most sense for your. I know I hate people that say that. What's going to make the most sense for your situation? There's no real hard fast rule. Best thing is, yeah, if you've got a lot of reuse, if you're having a lot of different things call the same functionality over and over again, obviously that's a prime candidate. If it's the same thing but tweaked just a little, the part that's tweaked, the question I have is, the part that's tweaked, is there other code outside of that that isn't tweaked? If you have this stuff, well, I got to tweak this a little bit, and that's 1/3 of the function that I keep copying over and over, what happens if the 2/3 change? Right. So that's where I get into the fact, like, well, then that should probably be something that's either as part of a module that's also loaded, or in your core that's generated off a parameter, and you've just got, and those, it's a different management problem. You've got, different ways that you could say, this is the way I want you to process it, pass that into the function. You could have a switch statement inside the function, and that thing just grows. Those are the types of things that I look at to go, yeah, this is going to change, but only like 3 lines of this function are going to change, and I've got 25.
Well, for example, my LDAP functions, the biggest thing that changes is what I'm going after. And I've had to dig in there because the way I've been searching, everything comes back as an array. So I've had to come up with the function that says, now everything comes back as a single value. Just grab that one thing, go on with life. Biggest problem now is everything's working and nobody wants it to break.
Of course. Well, and that's always lifecycle management, right? You need to enhance it. It's working. Well, why are you spending time on something that's working? Well, because it's not efficient, or it's not building a house of cards. Other questions? So I'll open it up. So in that example, I'll just open up in code because I can make it bigger. Recent. Oh. There it is. By the way, if you didn't know, you can do workspaces in code. Pretty awesome. I have 6 individual GitHub folder projects loaded in one workspace with 6 individual GitHub push pulls. Yeah. So I can literally flip between all of these and actually do check-ins, checkouts against each one independently. Yeah. So if we take an example of this core function inside of this, there we go. Here. So this is what we'll look at. There's stuff in here. There's PSAKE, or PSAKE, PSAKE. I know, PSAKE. Build. Build is just a function that runs PSAKE. There's these that are output folders. I just named them this just because I'm old .NET developer, so I called it bin. Whatever. It's not really. It's not a binary. That's just my compiled source. So this is what it outputs. Now I'm including snap.json, just that's me because I need to throw a config file in here that I write as JSON. But it basically outputs this, functions to export, the PSM. So this, as you notice, is not a function of, or this is get snap config and start snap job. That's great, but I didn't write that. I didn't write this PSM file this way. So what I wrote, whoops, close that up, is here in source, there's functions. Now, in this case, I went to public. This is what I wrote. I have 2 separate functions that are here, okay? And that has a lot of code commented out because I've been working with it. But that was the big to-do. And what happens is there's this bit of code, and this is something that I stole originally from Mike, and Mike wrote it or stole it from other people. It's a common way to do this, where you say, look, if you have classes or you have functions that are private. Now, I extended to classes because I was doing classes. Anyway, functions, private functions, public. Basically, it takes all of these, it just does a get child item, and it amends it all into one big file. So anytime I do a build, it takes all of these that are in public, if I had private or classes, takes all that, slams it into one single file, and then I have a module. So that's one way that this has it. I think if I look at like crypto is one of my other ones that I know actually is a nicer one, because I actually have functional tests in this one. Whoops. So, there's a module for PowerShell called PESTER. PESTER allows you to write unit tests for your PowerShell code. So if I execute this, and actually I'm going to open another window because you won't see it. There's so much that goes by that quickly. D-CD, oops. Snap crypt. Yep. Okay. So it's actually building, it's compiling all of that stuff. It's actually going through. So here, building the module structure. So it's going into that bin folder and actually building the structure. It says it's clearing the existing stuff in there. Cool, great. Creating the version folder, existing zip folder. So it's cleaning that out because I create zip files. Because again, I'm going to GitHub releases. So then it copies the module manifest PSD1. That is a true copy. That just, I have to have that set up. I increment the version when I do a build or I'm ready to release to a build. And then it does a validate on the manifest. So basically it does this build. This is part of PSAKE to actually put this through, and it runs these through. And then it, what's the next thing I do? Once I build, I think I run PS script analyzer. Do I do that? Yeah, I think here I'm doing PS script analyzer. I think there's a portion that validates the manifest file. That way, if I said export a function, but it's not in the PSM1 in my list of functions, it bitches and says, whoa, what are you doing? Your definition doesn't match. And then it runs PESTER, which executes my tests. So I actually, in this one, because this is an AES encryption module I wrote, none of the ones that were out there were working for me in PowerShell, because doing .NET cryptology in PowerShell is ugly. Can be. So I wrote this. This converts to and from 256-bit AES encryption using a salt, a hash, and a salt, IV hash, and a passphrase. So passphrase, salt, IV hash, those three pieces of information. What I do is I actually test, make sure the module manifest is correct. I then test importing it to make sure it never fails. I then test that these two functions are exported and they exist in the stack. And then I actually have a test function in here that I call, well, inside PESTER, I wrote a test function that says, okay, using this that's now loaded, I want you to go take the password, take these fake keys and go AES encrypt it, then take and turn it around and unencrypt it. And if password matches password, I know I work. And so every time I build, I know my encryption module is 100% working just by building and making sure it passes the tests. So, and the cool thing is, I know this is super small, window on window here. Oops. For almost all of the stuff I've done, this is PowerShell Core, and I am doing every single thing in PowerShell Core that I can do in Windows PowerShell. So just to let you know, a lot of this stuff for building everything. Now, Some of this doesn't work on a Mac because I'm a Windows guy, sorry, but it's running in PowerShell core. I'm a lot closer, right? These tools are cross-plat, getting there, very close. I think I think I changed my zip stuff to work, but there's still some stuff that I tried on my Mac and it's just like, so core, the idea, if you're going to go core, is one, much smaller footprint, right? One, it'll exist on some of the smaller server footprints, Nano, but I don't know anybody that uses Nano because they shot themselves in the foot. But core, the idea is that if you write stuff and you make it to where it's cross-plat, it'll run on Linux or Mac, which is still Linux. But that's at least the idea. There are certain things like get-service. There's no Linux equivalent because there's 15 ways to do get-service in 15 different distributions of Linux, let alone different versions of like Red Hat. They changed it from, So there is get-service in Linux. PowerShell core doesn't do any, there is no command. So, but you can run the bash command from the PowerShell core shell. So the idea was this framework that I'm building or that I've built allows me to do automation from, we use ServiceNow. And what this does is it allows me to build a form in ServiceNow. I use Jenkins as a middle point because there's limitations in ServiceNow doing calls out to PowerShell the way that ServiceNow works because it's a cloud platform. They have agents that come into your environment. You can run stuff off them, but you've got like a 5-minute runtime. That didn't work for some of the ones I have. Like building a server takes more than 5 minutes. Only 10, but still takes 5 minutes. So I needed something as a middleman. Plus, I wanted something that if it took a while or if I had a lot of stuff to process, I had a middle kind of management guy. Really, it was a way to do a REST call from ServiceNow into running some code. So Jenkins was my way to do that. Could be Ansible, could be other things eventually, who knows. But right now it's Jenkins. And what it does is it will actually call into Jenkins, REST call, that'll call into PowerShell. And I now have that to where that system can run not only PowerShell, but also I have stubs and I have almost all the libraries recreated in Python. Somebody on our Linux team helped me with that. I've been continuing to work with it, but so now I can run Python or PowerShell code interchangeably. However, Python on Windows is kind of an abortion. And there's so many modules in Python that are compiled for Linux kernels that don't run on Windows, like the LDAP one. So you want to query LDAP or AD, yet you have to be on a Linux box. Yeah. So my thought was, if I can have this running in core and it's cross-plat, then I can actually run this PowerShell and all the code I'm doing to kick off the automation scripts, framework to do all of that. I can run that on any platform. It doesn't have to be Windows. It can be Linux at that point. Because really, I'm just doing a lot of processing of data, looking up that against configs and figuring out passing parameters, encrypting, decrypting credentials, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of it isn't hard work, but the benefit is I'm now supporting more than just a Windows platform. So I wanted to make it something a little more, if I could, cross-plat. Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, all the development's done. Yep. Active Directory. Yeah. Well, and there's stuff that exists in core that doesn't exist in Windows PowerShell. So the ability to SSH from PowerShell into a Linux box exists. Well, okay. You can install OpenSSH via PowerShell, PowerShell's version of OpenSSH, which is what Core is using. And you can SSH. However, if you are to run PowerShell from Windows against a Linux box that's running PowerShell or Bash, you can actually use new PS session dash hostname Linux this and actually do private key pair authentication with the invoke command. Now, otherwise, you've got a PowerShell implementation of OpenSSH, and you type in SSH, and you're on a box. That Linux terminal bash translating to Windows, there's still some funky thing. I don't use any of that. I actually use a application to do SSHing from Windows to Linux because I don't, only because and I need SCP a lot of the times. So there are, but they're actually building the functionality right into the commandlets for core, which is kind of nice. And it's open source and community driven, so it's kind of nice too. No, that's coming with this. So I can't say no. We have in the past. We've done a PESTER. I was with Mr. Mike, and we were over at Merritt's when he was over there, and he did one. But as part of this, we're going to get into that as well, just kind of going through these series because we have them all the slides. We have them, I don't know if we had all recorded, but we're trying to go through kind of from start to end through the series. So we're going to do building them, and then we'll also start to see PESTER, and if there's enough interest to actually go into testing with PESTER. It's not too bad once you start to see the basics, but it's like anything, you got to play with it, and you're like, your tests are only as good as you write them. So you're like, test that the function exists. Okay, that's pretty easy. What else can I test? Right. So some functions like testing, adding a user to Active Directory or something like that. If you wrote a function that did something else or searched, kind of need to have an Active Directory server for that test to probably work right. So some of it gets a little funny. Oh, me? Yeah. Profile. So, nope. So sitting in a directory, same PS module path directory. So documents, documents, Windows PowerShell, right here, profile. In there is what I'm loading. I won't open that because it has my keys. I mean, they're tokens. It's not that big of a deal. It's not actual passwords. It's just API tokens. So I could go and validate them. But basically, when I open up a new PowerShell window, right, things that I'm doing a lot. Yes. Yes. Well, so there is an ISC specific one that you can additionally load things, but the ISC will load this one and the ISC. Yeah, so if I open up ISC, notice at the bottom, there's all the same stuff. Yep, there are two. I think it's just profile underscore ISC or something like that. Yeah, I don't ever use that one. I just use this because it comes, but like I've been doing a lot of things with Artifactory and Chocolatey and GitHub, so I didn't want to keep loading those, so I just went and made an environment variable and loaded that, and then I also have this Choco push function, which I really, really like. Nope. Choco? Yeah. I just made an Oracle Instant Client Chocolatey package. I know, it's habit. So this will take a new NuGet package that's a Chocolatey package, and it finds anything in the current directory I'm in that's a NuGet package, because this is for Chocolatey that I do a lot. And it says, oh, you want to push that? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and push this up to Artifactory. Yes, it's actually doing this right now. It's okay. It's the same version. It doesn't hurt anything. And it actually takes and pushes this up into Artifactory in the correct format and folder structure that it needs to be. So, because Artifactory is weird in the way you have to push stuff up for, you put it like, here's the repo, then there's a slash, like if you want to do company name, which we don't care, and then there's name of the package, and then the versions of the package underneath that. So it actually put it in this folder, like Choco is the repo, then it put it in Oracle Instant Client folder, and then it actually uploaded Oracle Instant Client 2.2.1 or 0.1 into that folder. So, yeah. But those are stuff like I do a lot of it, so it's like I always just want it there. I don't have to go load it, and I don't want to make a module. So I just threw it in my, it's just stuff I do, so I just loaded it in my profile. So that's where it is. I just put it there. And then core is PowerShell profile. Same thing. I have both on here because I was playing with, I don't really use core that often. But, oh, and by the way, on the latest version of Windows, I don't know if you guys noticed, my PowerShell windows are transparent. You can set that now. You can be like a Linux guy. 17, actually not the latest. It's one of the 1703s, actually. 1703, actually. They give you the ability. But what you have to do, it's weird. There's a checkbox in here. Use Legacy Console, uncheck that, and then you have these options. I don't know why they keep that set as default. I'm like, do you want to do transparency? Yes, I do. Want to set the background? Yes, I do. And I also changed my font. Love Hack. That's my font of choice. Hack. It's a font that you can download. It's free. But like, see the 0 here and the 209. It's a very differentiates I versus L versus, you know, lowercase. It basically, yeah. So 0 versus O, right? So you can see that, and then you have I L I L. So that you have very distinguishing things that are commonly what? Oh, and then it doesn't have a lot of serifs, so there's not a lot of eye strain with it. So it's kind of nice in that fact. Oh yeah, yeah. I just it literally is. I just do hack font. Yes, I know I use Bing. Just leave me alone. But it's just right here. You just download, and they have Linux, Mac, Windows, and Windows. It's an exe. You just install it and done. And then I don't know if you noticed, but my Visual Studio app is also using hack. I use it pretty much everywhere. My eyes have just gotten a lot easier for me to read. Yeah, it's not hard. It's just, yeah. Yeah, all I did in the settings is somewhere down here. Yeah, editor font family, hack. I just put it in front of the other ones. I just copied this, and I'm like, oh, I'll put hack in front of it, and it's fine. So it was super simple to put it in here. Tab size 2 for PowerShell. I don't like that. So this one needs to be refactored. So yeah, we'll get into all of that, the whole building stuff and all that stuff when we get into the next one. I'll post these slides. They're up on my website, and also they're on Google technically. So I'll post those up. I'm going to stop the webcast.